It was December, and Memphis was suffering a rare ice storm that left much of the city incapacitated. Ice storm or not, life at FedEx went on, so I prepared to pull out of the apartment driveway. Despite the needs of busy retailers during the holiday season, my car felt otherwise. As I began to back up, the car slid under the ice, lost control, and narrowly missed crashing into the parked truck belonging to my neighbor. Why am I doing this? I asked myself. I turned the engine off, went back inside, and never returned to the world of traditional work. I quickly ran out of stuff to sell from around my house, so I started looking for wholesale sources. I found a good deal on Jamaican coffee. I could buy it for $10 a pound and sell it for $17 to connoisseurs in the United States, so I started receiving 50-pound sacks of beans at my apartment every week. In what became known as the Great Coffee Disaster of 1999, one day the Salvation Army table collapsed under the weight of 80 bags of freshly ground inventory. The table crash freaked out the cat, and a semi-permanent layer of coffee dust settled on my floor, but I wasn't too worried about the damage. By that point, I was able to invest in a superior table for $40 at Home Depot. In addition to coffee, I learned about how to design websites and build an email list of potential buyers. For the next couple of years, I supported myself through a montage of creative self-employment. It wasn't making me a millionaire, and it definitely wasn't strategic, but it worked. I had been an amateur musician for several years by then, and I started playing around town more frequently. I worked in the mornings, spent a couple of hours each afternoon studying jazz and music theory, played freelance gigs at night, and traveled to local festivals on the weekends. Those things were fun. I enjoyed playing music, and I appreciated that I could work whenever I wanted. Something was missing, though. I felt like I was doing a lot of fun things, but I had no overall focal point for my life. I volunteered at my church and gave money to charity, but those acts seemed basic and insufficient compared to the urgent needs around the world. Depressed after 9/11 and browsing the internet, looking for extended service opportunities, I read about a surgeon in Africa who had lived in war zones for 17 years and counting. The story was fascinating. Many doctors and other professionals occasionally hop off for short stints abroad, but here was a guy who had chosen to spend nearly all of his working life in the poorest countries in the world. When I learned that he was living on board a hospital ship that was seeking long-term volunteers, I was hooked. Together with Jolie, who was working as a high school teacher at that point, I signed up for a 2-year commitment that turned into 4. The job and lifestyle were both extremely transformative. I worked with refugees, warlords, and presidents, and bounced around West Africa as I negotiated on behalf of the medical charity that operated the ship. Even though I worked for free, it was the best job in the world, and served as a better foundation than any university could have been. The time to leave the best job in the world is right before you get tired of it. With the notable exception of Gary Parker, the surgeon I had first read about, many of the people I knew who continued to work in post-conflict countries year after year became bitter and cynical about their surroundings. I don't necessarily blame them for it. War zones are hard places to work. But I knew I didn't want that to happen to me. After 4 years, I was getting tired, and I didn't want to join the ranks of the cynical. Jolie and I returned to the United States and began a new life in Seattle, Washington. I entered graduate school, worked full-time in a new publishing business, and traveled to 20 countries a year while training for marathons on the side. My time in Africa had given me some good leadership experience, so I used those skills to volunteer at a local nonprofit organization where I served as the president of the board. I kept busy, in other words, but once again I felt like something was missing. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew it was out there somewhere. I always loved to visit new places, and the years spent in Africa had helped me get comfortable with challenging travel situations. I decided to visit every country in the world, a quest that has taken me to more than 100 countries so far. Then I started writing about it, first on a website that grew to tens of thousands of regular readers, and now in the book that you are listening to.